Been watching ball with my big old brain and think the tape needs some explaining. Studying the stats to understand it. Hey, yo, talk data to me.
What is up, y'all? Welcome to episode 17 of Talk Data to Me. And you might see a familiar face in the box next to mine right now. And that is none other than Mr. Great Data Be Great himself. What's up, Ian?
What's up, Dwayne? Just, great to be with you on this lovely Wednesday morning. Just something in the air, dude. I feel like Kyle Pitts could have a good game here coming up. We'll see what happens. Again, recording this on a Wednesday. Yeah, man, good to be here.
Yeah, people's best ball pods are in shambles. And just so you know, guys, I don't know what would tilt me more. I did go check, and I do have I have 19 teams in Best Ball Mania. I think I drafted 104. And Kyle Pitts is in most of them, but there are some where he's not. Most of them have one or two Kyle Pitts teams. But Ian, I think you have the bigger tilt because you have Kyle Pitts on one of your said teams. And how many other managers also have Kyle Pitts?
5 of us, 5 of 14 in a freaking pod have Kyle Pitts. And I'm not even I've maxed, BBM before. Kind of made a decision with myself where I was like, you know what? If I win the Chihuahua 3, that's probably going to still make me feel pretty good. So I didn't really go too hard in the paint. I think I had 12 or 13 BBM entries, was lucky enough to get 2 across. And yes, the one with Kyle Pitts. Unfortunately, we got some battles to still, get through there. But, man, it is just Thursday. These things happen. I remember a couple years ago, anytime really, like the Thursday night games just seem so much bigger than they are. And I know 40 points is going to feel big, any day of the week, but who's to say someone's not going to score 50 on Sunday and completely make this irrelevant. So still early. We'll see what happens.
It is tough. It is tough when someone, especially from the tight end position, like getting 40.1. If you guys are playing in a PPR league, I've had several of you hit me up because I posted to social media about Kyle Pitts' game last night. And I had one manager say, hey, I'm the 1 seed facing the 8 seed. The 8 seed has Kyle Pitts, in his lineup. So pretty brutal. Most teams that have Kyle Pitts in normal fantasy leagues in the playoffs, either didn't make it, or B, they did not have the nerve. Probably they might not have had the nerve to start Kyle Pitts, or maybe they actually have someone that they like over him. Maybe they've got, Brock Bowers, who is not most likely going to outscore Kyle Pitts, but he could still give a good score. But at least you avoided the 40 to 45, or as you put in the tight end premium leagues over at FFPC, over 50 points. I am facing Kyle Pitts in a tight end premium league. So, yeah, enough crying about Kyle Pitts. We'll just celebrate him. We'll celebrate him as Ian likes to do. Kyle Pitts, good at football. We all knew it. We were all just early on it. So we have a great show planned for you guys today. It is the Fantasy Playoffs cheat sheet, okay? So we're going to go through our circle of trust. We're going to look at the rest of season projections, talk about where we would draw the lines of players that pretty much, we're just starting every single week versus where we start getting into territory where we're probably making decisions based on lineups, team totals, different factors. Of course, we'll be here every week walking you guys through that on the normal Fantasy Live show with myself and Ian and Friedman and Kendall and the rest of the crew. But we're also going to talk top running back, wide receiver stash plays. Yes, guys, it's the playoffs, but that doesn't mean that we can not be diligent now. We still want to be stashing those sort of players that could send our team to the next level if they were to get into to the lineup or earn a larger role. So we'll work through those guys. And then we're going to talk about streamers at the quarterback, tight end, kicker. We're going to talk about kicker briefly, guys. It's in Ian's contract that only I can talk about kickers. And Ian told me I have 30 seconds to do it. So we'll see if I can hit that. And then we're going to talk about some defensive streamers. We'll talk a little bit about ESPN, Yahoo. We'll talk through how often these teams are owned and things like that. So without further ado, let's get to it, Ian. I'm going to start off with a heater for you. It's a Hartitz heater, if you will. But name one fantasy player right now that managers probably don't have confidence in him. Hasn't necessarily been that good this year, but your spider senses they're tingling. And they tell you this player is going to boom in the fantasy playoffs, and your answer can't be Kyle Pitts. I'm sorry.
I literally wrote down on my sheet Kyle Pitts, but I already kind of blew that joke in the intro. So we will take it a little more seriously. I'm going to go with Tyrone Tracy here, Dwayne. Obviously got injured there before the bye, but has come out and practicing in full. I don't even think he's going to have a designation here going into Sunday. And just, again, we were talking on our rankings pod about just kind of how crazy it's been to see both these running backs produce 4 top 15 finishes between Tracy and Singletary in the Giants' last 3 games. I think it's a mix of them actually being a decent team running the football, and also, as you brought up, with drop back rate over expected. Mike Kafka just kind of being a complete coward, I would say, since taking over for Brian Dable and refusing to throw the ball even in games where, again, they are trailing big time. So Tracy, man, Commanders, Vikings, and Raiders, over the course of these next 3 weeks. We'll see. It could go more 50-50, and then it's going to kind of render him and Singletary more as RB3s anyway. But again, they've both kind of been making the most out of their opportunities to begin with. And if we do see that kind of 65-35, 70-30 split that it was leaning back towards Tracy before he got injured, man, I do think he's someone where, we're still kind of treating as an RB3, but we could look up at the end and be like, oh, Tyrone Tracy, was a top 12 RB during the fantasy playoffs.
Yeah, I do like that call. I also do. Your comments on Kafka as being a coward are also pretty funny. But man, the minus 13% drop back rate over expected in the games with Kafka is one of the more interesting recent team trends. The Jaguars also leaning more into the run game since their bye. The Bears, we've got a longer standing trend going back to their bye in week 6. So there's a few teams in there that are really mixing in a couple of backs, but they're running the ball enough. They're just effective enough on offense. I would say that more about the Bears and the Jaguars. But with the Giants, they definitely are loading their running backs up. And, look, we've got Theo Johnson, we've got Wan'Dale Robinson. So it also, in one sense, kind of makes sense that maybe they just look at it and they're like, well, these 2 running backs are maybe 2 of our best 4 options on offense. I mean, maybe that's part of it. So I like the call on Tyrone Tracy. I think the really nice thing with him is if things go right, which we don't really have with Devin Singletary, is that he is the guy that typically works on the pass downs. He was a receiver in college. I know you guys have probably heard that before, but I mean, there is that true dual threat upside is there for him more than Singletary. The big thing, though, for Tracy is right now Singletary has taken 88% of the short yardage carries in these 3 games with Kafka. So he's the guy more likely to get the touchdowns. But if I were to put a bet on one Giants running back, I do think it would also be Mr. Tyrone Tracy. So with that out of the way, we are
who's yours? Do you have one? Am I the only one in the hot seat here?
No, I just gave you one. I'm the host of the show. I don't have to answer that question.
Okay, well, I had 2 more honorable mentions. Tell me if you like
do it
better than them. Brian Thomas Jr., he gets Jets, Broncos, and Colts. Looks healthy, obviously. The Trevor Lawrence and Jaguars look like they're throwing the ball better. Broncos matchup isn't great, so maybe it'll be 2 or 3. But Jets and Colts, man, is pretty nice there for BTJ. And then Xavier Worthy would be the 3rd potential option. He has gained 55 yards in 3 straight games. He had gone 6 straight under that. They get the Chargers, Titans, and Broncos. So Chargers are coming on. We've talked about that. And again, the Broncos aren't ideal, but who's to say Mahomes can't get hot here? So BTJ, Worthy, Tracy, you like either of those wide receivers more?
Well, what I like about it is you are picking potential young talents that could still be evolving. And, we get breakouts at different times. Weird things happen with these players. Also like both of the offenses. The Jaguars, I don't love their offense. I don't love the Chiefs offense either, but they're both viable offenses. And the thing with BTJ is we have seen this before, and it was at a very similar time of the season last year when he just went nuclear and really helped you guys win fantasy championships. So anytime we've got a player that has shown they can do this in the past, and then they have, turned into someone that's not been doing it recently, I still like to know that we've at least seen it, with them. So I think that's the thing working for BTJ. The one other thing I'll say is, and we've talked about this before, but most often defensive game plans really center around the last 3 to 4 games when these defensive coordinators and their assistants are preparing for the next week. Guys, if you're in their film room, half the time they aren't even naming these players' names. They're just yeah, we got to cover 17. We got to take this guy away. We got to do this and that. And if you're watching Jaguars film, the name to know right now that you might be wanting to focus on more would be Jacoby Myers. And if you do that, then theoretically that could open up more one-on-one opportunities, maybe some shots down the field to BTJ, as those safeties have to kind of creep down and try to handle Jacoby Myers in that intermediate range of the field. Other thing on BTJ is we know that he's a big body that can do damage once you get down inside the green zone. So I like those things as well. So really love the BTJ call. Worthy, honestly, if he could just like come down with some of the big plays, like we would probably feel a lot different about him. Cause like the intermediate stuff and everything, like he's getting loose in some of these zone coverages. He gets lost sometimes, so he's doing just enough there. If like he could just tack on the big play, like on top of that, like we would have somebody scoring 14 to 15 fantasy points per game. So when you have Patrick Mahomes, man, we definitely know that could happen as well. I think I do lean to BTJ though. If I had to pick between those two, that means I will for sure be wrong, and you guys should go with Xavier Worthy. All right, so we're going to jump into the circle of trust here, guys, and I'm going to pull up the rest of season projections. We'll talk you guys listen to it on the pod through it. But Ian and I are essentially going to go through these positions, and we're just going to kind of talk back and forth here about where we would draw the lines for our tiers of trust, or we can call it circle of trust, if we want to say it's just a game, Fokker, a really funny game here that we play. But obviously we'll start off at the top. Josh Allen is projected for the most, guys, and the way our rest of season projections work, it doesn't matter so much for quarterback, y'all, but like it's taking into account teammate injury, so it does matter. We're taking into account like if you've got teammates missing from the lineup, when we think they're going to be returning from the lineup, that projects like yards that impacts quarterbacks if they're missing big receivers, things like that. If you are a skill position player, that could mean that maybe for 2 games in this sample, we see you as having a larger workload, but then we're projecting it to fall off. So those are all things we're trying to do in the back end to try to make these projections as accurate as possible. So let's start at the top, Ian. I think it's pretty easy here. We've got Josh Allen at the very top, in the circle of trust. Patrick Mahomes is still number 2 in our projections at 20.4 fantasy points per game, followed by Drake May, Matthew Stafford, Dak Prescott, Joe Burrow. Tell me when you want to stop. Just Jalen Hurts is now 7th at 19.1 fantasy points per game. Jacoby Brissett at 19. Lamar's right behind him at 18.9. And I update these every week, guys, on Tuesday. Yeah. So Lamar will, if we see another good game out of Lamar, he's going to climb up this list. But
I'm keeping Lamar in the circle, and I think I'm drawing a line right there. Sorry, Justin Herbert, Jackson Dart, Jared Goff. But man, I think there's at least one pretty red flag for each of those guys at that point.
I agree. Let me ask you real quick, going back on Mahomes. Like if we look at Patrick Mahomes, right, and we look at the schedule, I know you just talked about Worthy, but you get the Chargers. Now, guys, we're looking at our strength of schedule tool over on fantasylife.com. You can check it out over there. We also have the DVP tool, but just to make it easy, this shows them all together. So you get the Chargers this week, who've been really good against the pass over the last 6 games or so. They've given up 12.9 fantasy points per game, and we've got to face them this week for the Chiefs. Then you get the Titans, which is fine, but then you get the Broncos in week 17. Does that change? And obviously you guys can see in my rest of season projections, one of the things I weight the least is honestly the defensive matchups, just because there's so many moving parts, there's injuries, there's things that happen. I try not to get overconfident, like in the way we're handling the defensive deductions, but I will say that's 2 pretty tough matchups for Mahomes. So I'm going to flip back over here to the rest of season projections. Do you think Mahomes is too high? Like Drake May and Stafford more?
Like he's run 30, 59 yards these last 3 games. You kind of see it, and he's done it in the playoffs over the years too. Like once he does feel like he's in a must-win game, I mean, he just starts ramping up the rushing. So we have that going for us. And just as we've kind of seen this year, when Mahomes wants to run, he's maybe not quite, doesn't have the same touchdown upside as Hurts or Allen, but man, he's like certainly in that next tier. So no, I mean, the Texans game was statistically probably the worst game of Mahomes' career, but you know, you guys are watching that as well. And it's just like the amount of drop passes or, Kelsey letting one bounce off his hands for an INT. Like, I don't think Mahomes magically became bad at football. I think he's playing behind a very banged up offensive line and had to go up against the toughest defense in football. So obviously you brought up 2 of these 3 matchups aren't exactly going to be easy, but I think it can offset.
Broncos are pretty similar to the Texans, and he does get them. And now I don't think we would expect another career low from Mahomes. Like that was kind of a perfect storm. Hopefully the offensive line is a little healthier by then.
It is. I will say, if we had like an elite circle of trust inside the circle of trust, it's probably Josh Allen and then everyone else. So I hear you there.
Yeah. So I'll say this: some of you drafted Drake May, and you may have already had Mahomes because you could get May for free. Some of you got May off the waiver wire. What about that one? I know we're going to get that question, Ian. Like if you had to choose between Mahomes and May the rest of the way, knowing May's got the better schedule, both obviously will face elements. Do you lean to May, or are you going to stick with Patty like in crunch time?
Oh man, benching Patrick Mahomes, the fantasy playoffs.
It would be for Drake May, who we, to be fair, we've
I
ranked
know.
ahead of Patrick Mahomes quite a few weeks. So I do think it's close enough that you probably, you can really consider playing the matchups, to be honest, between those two guys if you have that sort of situation. One more quick one for you, Ian. What about Dak Prescott? Dak has been pretty much matchup proof, to be honest, this year. So I'm not overly worried, but he does get the Vikings this week. It's one of the tough matchups. They give up 13.7 fantasy points per game to passers. Then you get the Chargers, who we just talked about, for the Chiefs. Now you get a smash matchup in week 17 against the Commanders, who are very banged up. This number we're showing on the screen of 19.77 points per game, it's higher than that. Like that's their whole season. Like, if that's one thing we want to add this year, off season to these is filters. So you could say, hey, just show me what this looks like over the last 4 or 5 games to help you account for injuries and stuff. But what about these next 2 games against Minnesota and the Chargers? Does that make you feel any differently about Dak?
I think the offense and the Cowboys and the Bengals are kind of the same boat. Like when they're healthy and ready to go, I don't really think there's a defense out there that can fully keep them down. So I will say with the Vikings, man, like weeks 1 through 7, they were, I think, number 1 in EPA allowed per drop back. They have slipped back closer to like 25th or something. I didn't have it with last week's number, and so they might even be higher now.
Yeah,
But
they've been a little better the last few weeks. Like they were really good.
Yeah.
Then they got bad, but they've kind of warmed up again on defense over these last few weeks.
There's like a Cowboys Dan Quinn quality to Brian Flores' defense where when they face an undermatched opponent, like they beat the absolute hell out of them. But when they start facing, a Dak Prescott or one of these better offenses, I still think they can kind of find their way.
Okay, I like it. I also agree with you. I think after Lamar, we're drawing the line. Justin Herbert, guys, just a lot of problems there. And honestly, a big thing carrying his number of 18.2 here is just how much he's run. I could not believe how much he ran the ball with a broken hand. I was just like, this dude, like running for whatever it was, 50-something. He led the Chargers in rushing last
66.
week. Yeah, 66 yards. Then you get Jackson Dart, guys. Like he's very startable. The rest of these guys are really, you're getting more into matchup territory, though. But Herbert next week, whenever I update this again, it'll be interesting to see where he ends up landing based on this weekend. So,
and guys, I will say, super flex drafters, maybe even dynasty or both. Like, if you have that extra roster spot, you're not loving the handcuff running backs, and then we'll talk about some in a bit. Like Trey Lance, there's worse guys to have right now because Herbert already is playing so banged up. And again, I'm not saying Trey Lance is going to be good, but he probably would project Dwain for like 9 or 10 rush attempts the first game. He would be starting it. Just at this point in the season, I would hate to see someone relying on Herbert all of a sudden see the dude get even more injured with only a couple games left. So this is something to keep in mind. Similar sentiment with Jordan Love, Malik Willis. There's not many backup quarterbacks I would ever even feel the need to do this, but Malik Willis and Trey Lance probably are 2 of the only ones.
Yeah, I think those are both great call outs. And I mean, I can't believe you didn't use the opportunity to say the name T-Bag, but we'll just move forward. Caleb T-Bag. Williams is back up. All right, so let's do running back. Let's jump to running back. All right. I think, so guys, we're looking at the rest of season projections again. So Jahmyr Gibbs, Christian McCaffrey, Achane, Bijan Robinson, James Cook, all massively locked in. Jonathan Taylor. Okay, he took a massive hit in the rest of season projections this last week. As you guys probably know, we're either going to see Phillip Rivers or Riley Leonard under center this weekend. My gut says it will probably be Phillip Rivers at this point, and if not, I would still think it's Phillip Rivers the rest of the way, unless Riley Leonard were to come out and have like this really big game. Yeah. But the bottom line is we've got a massive downgrade here. Now, JT's still going to get his touches, Ian. We've still got him projected for 20.2 rushing attempts per game. That's better than anybody we have ranked ahead of him right now. Still have him basically getting 100 rushing yards per game. And I did bring down his yards per carry, but I think they're going to still continue to lean on him. My biggest concern is the rushing touchdowns. So this was a number that was projected closer to 1.1 per game, and now it's down to 0.7, which is not terrible, guys. Like, it's still not bad, and it's honestly maybe still too high. But I couldn't just completely rip it all away. They still have a good offensive line. JT's a good player, and I expect them to feed him. Where are you at on JT?
He's got multiple 80-plus yard runs this year, man. If there is someone that doesn't necessarily need the carries inside the 5-yard line, I mean, it is JT. That's kind of what, not like I was screaming from the mountains, like you need to get Jonathan Taylor in every single draft. But I remember going through it in round 2, man. I was like, if there could be this year's Saquon, JT just kind of sat as the guy where it's like, okay, it's a run first offense, good offensive line. He has that ability to actually rip off the 50-plus yard touchdown run. So, certainly cooled off recently. He deserves to be dropped down, but just, I don't know, man. Like anyone truly brave enough to rank JT like outside the top 12 and legitimately sit him on the bench,
Yeah.
kudos to you. Maybe it could work out, but just someone that like, okay, we're obviously not checking the offensive scoring box at this point, Dwain, but we still have the talent. We still have the workload, and we still like the offensive line overall in Indianapolis. So, we're still checking 3 or 4. And I think accordingly that puts him more so as a mid-tier RB1 as opposed to a, top 3 smash.
Yeah. I think if things went terrible for JT, like you're looking at someone playing like Ashton Genty and Quinshon Judkins. But I think the trump card that JT has over those guys, number one, as much as we like Genty and Judkins, he has proven from a talent per standpoint at this point to be better than those two players. And his offensive line is better. So I think those are really good call outs by you. So I think the lowest like that JT probably gets, even if we see a terrible performance from the Colts this weekend, is probably like RB 8 or 9 in the rest of season projections. And guys, we also will have playoff projections up for you guys that are wanting to draft any kind of playoff contest, and we will have the odds baked into it of the teams making it and how far we think that they're going to advance in the playoffs based off of the data from the book. So be watching for that. So you will have all of your playoff contest needs. Of course, we'll have a couple of different guillotine style leagues that you'll be wanting to check out for that as well. All right, Ian. So we'll keep moving. Josh Jacobs obviously questionable this week. Otherwise, he's in our circle of trust. The guy scores a touchdown every single game. Derrick Henry, a little tricky depending on game script, but I think we're still good. You're going to be starting him. Barkley, Javonte Williams. You tell me whenever you start getting worried here. RJ Harvey, Ashton Genty.
It's probably, it's definitely Genty at this point. Even Judkins, man, like we were talking yesterday about Jerome Ford and Sampson being out, but also freaking this offensive line's on its backup at like almost every single position at this point. Yep. So it's tough to be overly enthused about Judkins as well. I'll give Harvey the benefit of the doubt because, you brought it up too. The efficiency isn't something we can completely put on the running backs plate. And honestly, he improved it last week. So Denver still is a scoring environment we'd like. So I put Harvey, close to the line, but inside it. And then Genty and Judkins just outside the circle.
And I think, back to your comments around JT, like when we look at Harvey, like we have a team that has a lot to play for here, right? The Denver's got their playoff seat on the line. They have a really good defense that keeps these games, in a positive place for the running game. And if not, we know that Sean Payton loves to use his backs out of the backfield. Last week, Harvey had a high in route participation rate. He had a 16% target share, also a season high. So I think, him showing last week like that the efficiency was a little bit better, and it can be such a fluky week to week thing. I'm with you. The matchups aren't ideal for Harvey, guys, the rest of the way, but you also have a pretty good offensive line. So we've got an overall team environment that we like, with Harvey, that I think is enough to keep him above the line. So let's talk about like this. Let's draw one more line now. That was kind of, I think, like, hey, you're super safe, but we've got one more like tier I think we should hit here. So Genty, I'll really say quickly on Judkins, guys, like if you're wanting a prop bet, for this weekend, I do think the receiving yards for Judkins is the way you go, because Jerome Ford, what he's going to leave on the table, it's not rushing attempts, right? He wasn't really getting any carries. I think the backfield as far as rushing attempts is going to probably stay the same with Quinshon leading the way, sprinkled in with Dylan Sampson. But the passing down reps that Jerome Ford was handling, if they give any of those to Judkins and they don't just hand them all over to Sampson, that's where Judkins could really pick up some value, because that's honestly been his, he may have 4 Achilles heels, but like one of the big things is not getting targets, in the passing game. So if we see that change,
like when they do throw him the ball, so.
Yeah. And when they scheme him up, if you go watching the film on Judkins, like if it's like a static kind of throw where he like kind of works through the middle of the line and just turns around on that little underneath pattern and they throw it to him, like he's not great at turning around and getting a lot of yards. But on the design plays where they've got him on the move and they get him the ball on the move, Judkins has actually been really good, and he's made some big plays in the passing game this year. Okay. So we've got Bucky Irving. He's obviously in there, even though he doesn't have the goal line role very clearly. They've given that to Sean Tucker since Bucky Irving's been back. Chase Brown, I think, is still in there. Brees Hall. You just tell me where we want to stop. Kyron Williams.
Honestly surprised Chase Brown is underneath, Genty and Judkins. I'm not doubting your process here or anything like that, but I just think ranking wise, like we're going to have him comfortably ahead of those guys more weeks than not.
And it's one of those things where projections and rankings can come in a little bit differently, but it does go back to the uncertainty of the splits for Chase Brown when we've had Samaje Perine. Now, if we get another data point this week where Chase Brown is like what we saw last week, which was like a 65% snap share, then he will definitely move up. If we see that data point again, Chase Brown will move ahead of RJ Harvey. Yeah. I think he moves up to right under Javonte Williams. I mean, obviously, if Harvey has another big game, I might put him right below Harvey. But to your point, he would enter the first circle of trust, not the second circle of trust. So,
I think the second one, I'd probably draw a line right after ETN. So I would keep Kyron in there, assuming Breece Hall's okay. You know, he still should be getting, you know, pretty much fed the football. It's, you know, getting to Hampton, Swift, these more kind of evenly divided backfields, the Pittsburgh Steelers going on there as well, New England Patriots. Like, those are the ones where, not saying it couldn't work out, you know, we're going to have to make decisions where, you know, I think those guys will still be on the start side of the calls, but, you know, just tougher to exactly have, you know, too much, you know, confidence in them.
Yeah, I think Hampton's the really interesting one because the betting markets, like I have him projected for unders in all of the categories this week versus the betting markets. Last week, I was slightly to the over in the model. So I don't know if Vegas knows something, you know, that we don't. I've done a lot of research on it, but I just think Kamani Vidal's played good enough that I don't want to like get overly crazy with Hampton until I actually see him take over the workload. Like, because
dude, and
go ahead.
Yeah, like they're in Kansas City, then in Dallas, then versus Houston. I mean,
and
those
their
are
offensive
front
line's
sevens.
Terrible.
Exactly. Like Chris Jones, Quentin Williams, and then freaking everyone on the Texans. Like, they could legit just hold the Chargers to like 50 rushing yards in those games.
Yeah. I'll say this. I think Hampton ends up leading the team the rest of the way as far as carries go, but I think Vidal's a big, I think, you know, there's real potential that he keeps the passing down work. And there's potentially keeps a bigger workload than we think. So I agree. I'll give Hampton the caveat that like he could improve with a really good data point this week. Whereas if Kenneth Walker had a really good data point this week, we'd be like, yeah, okay. Yeah. Fool me once. Like we're not falling for it, which is the next name on the list. So I agree with you. I would say Hampton's below the line now, but he's the best player, I think, of all the names below. To actually, after one more good data point, we change our mind. And here are the other names. You tell me if there's another name you think that's like that. Swift, Jalen Warren, Woody Marks. What about Trevion? He projects at RB24 the rest of the way in PPR.
I think Stevenson's going to be every bit as involved, 50-50, maybe even 55.
And if you saw Trevion this week, though, get 70% of the snaps, would you trust it? Or you'd be like, nah, I'm not going for that, Mike Vrabel?
I'd feel better about it. I'm moving closer to the line and everything, but I don't know if I could exactly get him in that circle of trust. I would need to see multiple in a row. I will say Woody Marks and Devin Neal would be the two guys. I know you have Kamara not out for the season, which makes sense. But if he doesn't return, like Neal and Woody, if we had to do kind of like blind resume tests, like they would have the sort of, you know, utilization, just raw volume to make us feel good about it. And the Saints schedule, man, I know we'll talk about DSTs and Tyler Shuck here. Like the Saints do have one of the better fantasy playoff schedules out there.
Yeah, I agree with you on Devin Neal. He would go right in there with Woody Marks. So yeah, I was just looking at the ceiling real quick.
Like even those two versus Genty and Judkins. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Marks and Neal outscore them the rest of the way.
Yeah, I'm with you. So I think Devin Neal goes in that same territory as Woody Marks. So I think the other line though that we would be so you mentioned it. We would draw one at Hampton. And then essentially, like you get all the way down to probably Kareem Hunt or probably Tyrone Tracy. And there's just so many unknowns with these other guys. They're all splitting stuff. All right, let's move on to wide receivers unless you have anybody else you're wanting to hit here at running back.
Nah, that's cool.
All right, cool. Here we go. Jackson Smith and Jigba, like the circle of all circles of trust right there with Puka Nacua, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamar Chase. Then we got a little bit of a teardrop, but obviously Rashee Rice is still in there. CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens. Again, just tell me, Ian, where you start feeling weird. Nico Collins. And again, like with Marvin Harrison Jr., I need to let rest of season. There's something going on there. I got to chat with our data scientist, Alex. It's not deducting a game. I'll send him a message.
Damn it, Alex.
Damn it, Alex. No, I mean, with Marv, like we just had the data point, you know, we have the data points with Jacoby Brissett, you know, which have been good, even though we got the weird thing with Michael Wilson.
No, in all seriousness, like if you were going raw projections and Marv was playing the rest of these games, I mean, it's not completely ridiculous.
It's the Jacoby Brissett effect.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I will say that probably just need to split them closer anyway, even in the projection that I have the rest of the way. So AJ Brown, Chris Olave, Devontae Adams, T. Higgins. Where's your line?
No, I'm sorry. I'll keep T. Higgins in here. My eyesight isn't great. I thought I thought T. Higgins was a Buka for some reason. So
Yeah.
okay.
So
Higgins
then
is in there as long as he's playing.
we've got Wilson in here.
Depending on Marv.
And we've talked about Wilson enough. It is dependent on Marv. You guys know that. So we'll keep going. I think after Higgins, there is a line, though. Michael Wilson stays in games without Marvin Harrison Jr. Games with Marvin Harrison Jr., he obviously falls out. But I think there's a line when you get to Tet. And we like Tet, but I think you're drawing the first line.
And some of the stuff, man, like he had that awesome 130-yard game against the Falcons, but people really started throwing around the 7th in receiving, and people called this dude a bust, kind of doing the, non-bye week inclusive stats to make themselves look better. So, look, again, we like him. He scored 4 touchdowns in his last 3 games, but let's not pretend like he's just been a model of consistency out here. And it's the same thing with Bryce Young. So, like T-Mac, I think he's going to be a top 20 receiver. But at the same time, if we look up after the fantasy playoffs and he's wide receiver 43 per game, man, I'm not going to be like, oh my God, how did this happen?
Yeah. So what's interesting about the receivers is once you get past like T. Higgins' name, like there's a really huge tier here, in my opinion. I mean, I don't read down the list and automatically go, okay, Tet McMillan is way better than Jamison Williams. Tet's at 15 and Jamo's at 23. I would not be surprised at all if like those were flipped. And guys, projections 13.8 points per game right now for Tet, 13.1 for Jamo. There's not a huge difference like in these two players. It's really it's a pretty big tier. But if I had to draw another line, Ian, for me, I do think it's after Terry McLaurin. Even though Debo projects for the same points at 12.8 per game, just hasn't looked as good in recent weeks. Feel like he's more just kind of, I don't know, just kind of stuck in this old role that he was in versus earlier in the year when they were using him. And maybe because Terry was out was why they were doing that, using him on different routes and different concepts. So I feel like I don't want to call him a full gimmick, but I worry about Debo. And you got Metcalf after that. He had the big game last week, but man, the Steelers offense still scares me to death. Like they run the ball so much. Really, DK's only had like 2 games where we've loved having him in our fantasy lineup all year. And he's had a lot of duds. Wandell, yes, he does get volume, but like, I mean, if you told me like I've got to start Wandell every week of the playoffs, I'm not feeling great about it.
Yeah, and Darius Slayton is someone who could outscore Wandale and wouldn't be super surprised. So I would have Wandale, and we do have him up, a little bit further in the ranks. And there are the differences in projections and ranks. So I get it. I think after last night, Mike Evans would deserve to be up there. We're definitely ranking him number 1 Buccaneers receiver rest of the way. So Wandale,
Evans, honestly, would you put Evans all the way up to where close to T. Higgins? I mean, we've got a player that we know historically has been good. The Bucs have to win. Yeah. He looked good last night. Thank goodness his collarbone wasn't messed up on that play. I think there's a chance like Mike Williams. I mean, Mike Evans, just looking at all the names above him, like obviously Igbuka's going to come down, guys. Mike Evans, I like him over Zay Flowers. I like him over Cortland Sutton. I like him over Devonta Smith. Does he maybe just go in this mini tier here with McMillan, Waddle, and Watson?
I take him over all 3.
Yeah, I agree. I had him at 20 in the ranks this week. I talked too much to Ian and Friedman, and I moved him down to 25. I'm a complete idiot.
Did you see a single time other than when he was banged up that he missed snaps, Dwayne? Like, what the hell was that report?
70% routes. So yeah, they were rotating him a little bit, but no, he led the team in targets, and he was just doing Mike Evans things. Okay, so I think that's good. So we would draw the second line. I do think is after Terry McLaurin. Is there any of these other names here? Like, is there anyone here that does anything for you?
I know Jacoby, the way he's playing, deserves to probably be up there a little bit. But, also 4 weeks, if Brian Thomas Jr. evens things out, it wouldn't be the most shocking. But he could argue to be in that kind of second tier.
And just so you guys know, if you're looking at this on the screen, it's sorted by their total points, but I flipped it to points per game so you can see the examples like Drake London. He's down here because we've got him missing games, but obviously if he's back 16.5, he moves way up, right? He would obviously be up there in that circle of trust if he re-enters the lineup. I think Juwan Jennings and Myers are the 2 big ones to call out here. as guys that I would trust in my lineup. I don't think they're locked in wide receiver twos the rest of the way, but I feel good about their floors.
And Juwan's another one just benefiting from, again, this 3-game schedule stretch. Titans, Colts, and then the Bears and San Francisco for these last 3. So offense, hopefully, again, I want to see a healthier Purdy coming out of that bye, because if we get, as you talked about, Dwain, that crazy drop back rate with Mac Jones under center with the best version of Purdy, like then we could see some fireworks in San Fran.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. And it might happen this weekend against Tennessee, just kind of a funnel defense. So, yeah. All right, real quick, let's hit tight end, and then we'll move on to some stash plays. Ian, I think the big question is here, we've got the top 3 of McBride, Bowers, and Kittle. Like that, guys, those are the elite options. Mm-hmm. And obviously after last night, Kyle Pitts will move up some more up this list. He was still already 13. But this
that was with
Drake
the
London
assumption
comes
that
back.
Drake London. Yeah,
yes,
exactly. So
yes, but I think the big question here is the next tier. So we've got Fannin now sitting at 4 because he's playing in that full-time role. We've got Travis Kelce in a full-time role with the Chiefs, but then it immediately gets shaky again. And look, Fannin has his own issues, guys. Like he plays for the Browns. We've got a small sample with Shedeur Sanders, but he's in a full-time role. But I would still lump him in with Kelce right now. But I think there's another break right after that because you get to Kincaid, part-time role. Ferguson, not as good when we have CeeDee Lamb and Pickens on the field. He's dealing with an injury. Juwan Johnson, not a great offense. Aronde Gadsden, not playing as much because they have to use blocking tight ends and they're running the ball more. I mean, Hunter Henry, any of these names do anything? Like obviously Kyle Pitts is the big name to move up.
I think Brenton Strange maybe deserves a little bit more love, but it's pretty flat at that point. So I know he's not necessarily that far behind some of the other dudes, but I'm with you, man. You could argue again, that second kind of circle of trust probably
Tyler
ends
Warren
after Juwan Johnson. Oh God, that's so sad. I wanted to ask you, so
I may have been
Tyler
too hard
Warren,
on him.
Yeah. All right, Dwain, if we were doing a dynasty draft today and we were on the clock and Tyler Warren and Colson Loveland were the 2 best options available, which one would you want?
Oh, I'm team Loveland and Dynasty and always was. Yeah. I was team Tyler Warren for the year.
I know that's where we were. I was just wondering if anything about this year changed. Honestly, like if you would have asked us that though in week 18 or week 8, I think we might have changed them and like just give me Tyler Warren long term. But I think based on what we've seen from Loveland in the second half, I'm fine sticking with that take of Loveland.
And they're both good, guys. They're both good, and either one of them could be the better dynasty play. And anyone telling you that they've got a formula or a magic bullet or an 8-ball, like some of these guys out here, they have the magic 8-ball, but it just has fantasy answers on it. And it says Tyler Warren or it says Colson Loveland. We really don't know. They've both done a nice job. They were both very good prospects. Colson Loveland did grade out as the higher prospect in the supermodel. He had higher hit rates, but not to the degree where I would like come out and just, pound my chest and say, like, if you like Tyler Warren over Colson Loveland, like you're a moron. Some of these tweets I see with stuff like that, and no one's calling anyone morons, but just the way that some of these things get touted kind of makes me a little crazy sometimes. And I get it. We're in the business of hot takes, but all right. Any other notes here on tight end?
Not really. It's so bleak. It always is. But I was hoping Darren Waller could be a thing because they have one of the best schedule stretches. They get the Bengals here in week 16. But, they like Greg Dulcich.
We'll talk about him some more here.
Yeah. And to Dulcich's credit, he stepped up a little bit too. So, no, I think you have it about right.
Okay, cool. All righty then. So let's talk about some running back stash plays here, Ian. And we are going to tier some guys for y'all. And the parameters here has to be available in 40% or less of leagues, right? And I used Yahoo. Ian used ESPN.
You had to make sure Blake Corum was eligible. That's where the 40% came from.
Yeah, no. Well, I looked at the cut line with the 50%, and I was like, oh, how are some of these people available? That's not realistic. If we say those names, people are going to say we're dumb. So we don't want people saying we're dumb. Corum was way lower than this, but obviously after the last 2 games, he's moved up. So let's talk about, and you see if you think you agree with these tiers or you would tier them differently. So I have tier 1 as Blake Corum. He's rostered in 40% of Yahoo leagues. I have Brian Robinson Jr. actually second at 22%. Yeah. Tyler Algier I have after that. He's available. He's rostered 39% of the time. Bajal Tutin and Emmanuel Wilson. I thought of moving Emmanuel Wilson up just knowing that Josh Jacobs is dealing with an injury. But let me hit the tiers real quick. Then in tier 2, I had Jalen Wright, Devin Singletary, and Dylan Sampson. And then I had a sicko tier for you guys of Tank Bigsby and Malik Davis. So I would say, A, do you think tier 1 is right, or would you cut someone from that tier? Again, Corum, Robinson, Algier, Tootin, and Emmanuel Wilson. Or is there anyone else you would add to it?
I think you could argue Tootin and Wilson maybe are tier 2 just because, if something happened to ETM, we could see LaQuint Allen being really annoying on pass downs. Maybe that does turn a little more 50-50 than we're expecting. And then with Emmanuel Wilson, as much as he did dominate the touches, in that one game without Jacobs, like Chris Brooks was eating a lot into the pass down stuff. Yeah. And if I wonder in like a different game script, if it could have gone a little bit south, but still would be firmly the recommended dudes. And I think we'd find a way to rank them, in the top 20 without too much difficulty. So from that standpoint, I definitely like both of them still a lot more than Wright, Singletary, and Sampson. So if anything, I'd make it into 3 tiers and then just have Tootin and Wilson alone there. So, but no, I think you got it right. Otherwise, the only names I was wondering, maybe sicko tier, we could maybe add Samaje Perine behind Chase Brown.
Yeah. I like that one too.
Then the Ray Davis and Ty Johnson thing, man.
I think Perine actually on Yahoo was rostered over the 40%, but he might not be in ESPN. So that's a good call out.
Wow. That'd be wild. There's no way. Ray Davis, Ty Johnson's interesting too. Just because it is the Bills, we'd have to try to figure that out. I felt a lot more confident to be Ray Davis before the season, but Ty Johnson, they paid him. He's really been more definitively the backup. And
I think it's a split. I think it's a split that goes down most likely. I think it's probably an annoying split that also we might not even be able to predict. That's why I left them off. I do think they're good honorable mentions though.
Yeah. So it's tough, but it is the Bills. So again, that split becomes a little bit more worthwhile. And Ty Johnson, like they'll give him the ball on 4th and 1 on like a carry up the middle sometimes. So I'm just
Ryan 4% rostered. So you're right. I just didn't put him on the list. So
all good.
I do agree with it. Like I don't think Taj Brooks probably gets almost anything if something happened to Chase Brown. So
I'd honestly put Perine ahead of Dylan Sampson, I think. So yeah, Corum, Robinson, Algier, Tootin, Wilson, Wright, Singletary, Perine, probably top 8.
I like the Perine call out, and I'm good on it with Sampson just because of the offense. But the nice thing for Dylan Sampson is that, and we don't ever want players to be injured or out, but Jerome Ford did go on IR yesterday, guys. So Dylan Sampson, if something happened with Quinshon Judkins, has shown an ability in the passing game. Would they load him up in the run game? They might have to, because like who else do they have? They've got practice squad players that they might bring up. There was a guy, Raheem Sanders. I think Raheem Sanders was the name. Was early in the year, actually getting some run with Dylan Sampson. Yeah. So okay, yeah. So what about Malik Davis?
Yeah, I have him in a few squads. Just Javonte Williams, you want your handcuff? Like it's definitely him. We're not going to see Jaden Blue getting brought off the bench and just all of a sudden inheriting that role. Yeah. So Davis has been there like for a year or so. I think he knows the offense, and honestly, he's looked okay with his opportunities he's gotten. So it could be gross Shanahan 49ers like Trey Sermon days where we see Hunter Lupke actually like getting 40-45% of snaps. They might trust him more in pass protection and stuff, but I still think again like it's kind of Perine-esque where it's like 15 touches in the Cowboys offense, man. That still goes a long way.
Yeah, honestly, the only thing that has him down here is because, guys, he's rostered in less than 1% of leagues. So if you're playing in one of these sicko leagues, Malik Davis is definitely the name to know here, because I'll tell you what, if next week Javonte Williams was out, I don't know that we would project Malik Davis any differently than what we would Bajal Tootin. And the way we're tiering these things, it feels like we would, but when I really think about where the Cowboys are and how much they're out on Jaden Blue at this point, I would be giving Malik Davis 60% of the work, which is about what we would be giving everybody we named, which is where I do think you're correct, Ian. If it was Corum, Robinson, or Algier, we're probably projecting 70 to 80% of the work to those guys. Yeah. Tootin, Wilson, Wright, Singletary, Sampson, Bigsby, Davis, all in that 50 to 60% range. Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. Let's talk wide receivers really quick. And the guys, so with running backs, really, we're just trying to understand the depth charts. Obviously, we care about talent and everything, but you guys have seen it over the years, man. If they get the volume, especially if they're in a good offense with a good offensive line, they can pour on the points. We see it every single year. There's a name that hits, and we're like, oh my God, look at this player. And then you never hear from them again. And their whole career, it's over, And the thing that started the trend, I remember back in the day, it was the Shanahan running back, Ian. It was like, oh, Olandis Gary, he's almost, as good as Terrell Davis. Oh, Mike
Mike
Anderson.
Bell.
Mike
Was that one? Yeah.
Yeah. So with running backs, like the volume and the quality of the offense is so huge for you, but at receiver, just getting on the field is not enough. Like you have to then be good enough to do all the other parts of your job, which is you got to get open, and the quarterback's got to be on the same page with you. You got to catch the ball. You got to do something afterwards with it. Like there's a lot more at play. So talent is really a massive driver at the wide receiver position. So our list is shorter here. I have tier 1 is Jaden Higgins, rostered in 42%. So I did break the rule to get him on the list. Jaden Reed at 41%. And then I have tier 2 is A.D. Mitchell, Chimere Dike, Darius Slayton. Then I have a sicko tier of Flournoy, Mechie, and Jack Besh. And again, I there are a lot of people I left off of here that I know might be running some routes, but I didn't necessarily think they were good players.
Yeah. No, I think you hit the big names. Honestly, Chimere DK would be the one guy that I'd be a little more willing to actually throw in a flex. I know I have this 14-team league, 3 wide receivers, 3 flex spots, and I always reserve one for Mr. DK. 4 top 20 finishes in his last 7 games. And yeah, he's gotten some help from the punt return stuff, but that's also, something he brings to the table here. So this week in particular, 49ers dead last in PPR points per game allowed to slot wide receivers. I think DK, man, honestly has flashed throughout this year, and he deserves a little bit of credit. So I would have DK probably ahead of AD Mitchell at this point, just because, God, if it's going to be Brady Cook these next 3 games, I just have no certainty for anyone involved here. So Darius Slayton will be the other one that, again, obviously I drafted a shit ton throughout the entire summer. So I am firmly biased, but I just think that he has already been coming on a little bit with Dart. He had, he's only had 1 or 2 good games, I think you could say, in these last 6 or so weeks, but it's been a little fluke. He had a long touchdown against the Eagles, nullified on ticky-tack OPI, dropped a long touchdown. Got to be pretty good to get open enough to drop a long touchdown, everyone. So we'll just keep that in mind. And then Commanders, Vikings, and Raiders over these next 3 weeks. Like, I can see him getting behind those secondaries.
Yeah, and with Slayton, like that's why I wanted to have him on the list. Like it could definitely happen. Like he's not really been getting a lot of targets, and he's never been a super high target player, but he's shown to be able to have value despite that, right?
He gets the air yards when he does.
Right. So he can come up with these stretches of games. Like Darius Slayton, he was only a best ball player. He's not a guy that you guys would have necessarily drafted, but now that we're to the end of the season, you don't have Malik Neighbors around. And obviously there's targets up for grabs with really Wandell and Theo Johnson being the only game in town. So yeah, I do like that one. Okay. Any other call outs on wide receiver or?
Nah, again, I think you're right. And guys, just in general, if you have a need at wide receiver and you only have like 3 or 4 rostered, okay. But unless you have some of those like positional limits, which piss me off, and I'm sure they do for you, but like I'll take all those running backs ahead of these guys. If there's not a realistic spot, because, DK Dwain could work as a top 12 wide receiver his next 2 weeks. And like, okay, we'll probably rank him like wide receiver 33 in week 17, which, hey, maybe you can say is our fault, but it's so much tougher to have sort of confidence in these wide receivers rising up as opposed to a running back who the starter gets injured. And it's like, oh yeah, 15 touches now, easy.
Yeah, it's like Ian says, it just comes down to your roster. If you're sitting on a really thin wide receiver core and running backs are your absolute strength, then yeah, I'm going to carry Jaden Higgins over one of those names. A player that's played well that could also easily have the switch flip and he's suddenly in a full-time role instead of, he's the wide receiver 2 right now on the team, but still rotating. And then I would say Chimere DK is the other guy that's similar to that. He's already in a full-time role, but if suddenly he were just able to click, with Cam Moore, they could just get, the playing time's already there. He could just get on a hot streak and he's already shown flashes. So yeah, it comes down to your roster construction, but really good stuff. So let's talk about streamers, Ian, and we will start with quarterback. And I know there's a name that you're super high on, so I'm going to let you kick it off to lead off our list. And guys, same rules apply here. We're looking for players that are rostered under 40% of the time. Ian was using ESPN. I was using Yahoo. So we're kind of like, straddling the fence on this. But Ian, who's your first name here?
I think it's Tyler Shuck, and I think it's everyone else, man. I mean, we've already seen the guy flashing as a passer, not in a great environment. I mean, Chris Olave playing through the back, and then Jawan Johnson, former Oregon teammate, but he's making Devon Vele look like a thing out there, okay? So haven't gotten a ton of, national media hype because it's the Saints, and they're still losing more games than not, but just really was impressed with some of the throws he made in particular in that Dolphins comeback. Honestly, hit Olave for a potential game-winning touchdown, but couldn't come down with it. So, again, been liking what I've seen from him as a passer. He moves around the pocket pocket pretty well, and he's got a howitzer, man, for a right arm. So he can stress the defenses vertically. And then seeing what we saw last week against the Buccaneers, remember, he actually turned in the third best performance of the season among quarterbacks in fantasy points from rushing. It just is a situation where, like, I don't want to just comp every tall white quarterback who can run to Josh Allen, but he has those two attributes that we look for in young quarterbacks, where he's got the big arm, he's not afraid to throw deep, and he can move around enough. And I think even in a bad offense like that, combination can still produce fantasy points. And then you add on the schedule, man, Panthers, Jets, and Titans the rest of the way. If we knew Jaden Daniels was out the rest of the season, I'd probably still give a nod to Marcus Mariota. And I would give a nod to Marcus Mariota definitively.
I agree.
But for me, it's Mariota, Tyler Shuck over the rest of these guys, man.
Yeah, so just looking at Shuck, number one, like he projects higher than the rest of the names we're going to talk about. He projects for 15.1 fantasy points per game. That's actually over Aaron Rodgers, another name we'll mention. We're going to give you guys just some playoff matchup stuff because maybe you're dealing with just massive injuries. But what Ian just said, I've got up the games here for Tyler Shuck. And if you're just looking at, it's not just the scramble stuff, guys. He's much more involved in the design run game than what people think. I mean, look at these. He's got 7%. He had 0% in week 10, but then he had 20% of the design rushing attempts in week 12, 13% in week 13, 14% in week 14. So essentially a lot of that stuff they were giving away to Taysom Hill, like half of that's really going to Tyler Shuck now in these last few games. And honestly, he looks a lot better running the ball than old man Taysom Hill. Let's be honest. Now, if you need 1 yard in a cloud of dust, like fine, give it to Taysom Hill. He's probably the better option. But Tyler Shuck, much more spry legs at this point. And as Ian mentioned, the production's been there. We've got 3 performances of 16 points or more. You've got 19 in week 10, 16.4 in week 13. And last week, you guys obviously know with the 2 touchdown runs gave you 22.3 fantasy points. So I'm with you.
I think the Saints might have 2 quarterbacks, dude. Because I remember we were kind of surprised when they actually benched Spencer Rattler for Shuck. I thought Rattler actually
and then they're going to draft another one.
I guess so, man. Well, that would be.
You can never have too many quarterbacks, Ian. That's the one position. Like, man, if you could have plenty, it'd be great. And then you find the one that works out, and then you trade one of the other ones. Because some people are having to play Phillip Rivers right now. They would probably like to have a Spencer Rattler.
I'm just saying, man, dynasty, like Rattler's value's got to be nothing. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a chance to start somewhere else. It's not going to be in New Orleans at this point, but I thought he showed enough this year.
So I'm with you, Ian. Shuck is, and the matchups are good. Like they're not like elite, but they're good. They're neutral across the board. Now, here's the other name I'm going to throw out. It's absolutely freaking gross, but like the schedule is there.
You don't have to say it, Dwain. You don't have to say it. You don't have to do this to yourself.
I don't have to do this to myself. Yeah, I mean, I'm just. JJ McCarthy has the best schedule, Ian.
Oh, he
gets the Cowboys, he gets the Giants, he gets the Lions. And I'm just saying, like, look, guys, we're not telling you to start JJ McCarthy over, again, we already just said Tyler Shuck over JJ McCarthy. This assumes you've just had a mass catastrophe, right? At your position, at the position of quarterback. And, the waiver wire is, in rough state. And I mean, I think the other guy right behind him, Ian, is Tua. He gets the Steelers, he gets the Bengals, and he gets the Bucks. And Tua, you could argue, is probably the better option because we've at least seen Tua do it in his career.
Yeah.
We've at least seen Tua have games.
The matchups are good, but at the same time, we need to have something in our mind where it's like, all right, these are good matchups for the quarterback, but that should be nullified when we're also looking at DSTs and we're like, oh, this is a great matchup. They get the Vikings this week. They get the Dolphins this week.
I get it, but it goes both ways. Like it really does go both ways. Those are all winnable matchups for Tua. And again, guys, this is just assuming you're in a real jam. A couple of others I'll throw out. We don't know what's going to happen with Jaden Daniels, but to Ian's point, if for some reason Jaden Daniels out for the rest of the year, like Marcus Mariota we would have him ranked above Tyler Shuck. So there are some matchups you guys can play. You get Aaron Rodgers versus the Lions in week 16. So he gives you one usable week. Like I can see Aaron Rodgers being in our top 18 quarterbacks that week against the Lions. Like he's usually in that 21 to 22 range anyway. He's going to get a few spots up versus Detroit. But I would say those are probably the biggest ones. Mariota gets the Giants this week. He gets the Cowboys in week 17, plays against the Eagles in between there. So not necessarily great. So like if I was trying to mix and match, like I think it's Shuck's the clear, easy one. But a combination of Mariota and Rodgers, if Mariota plays, you get Mariota versus the Giants, Rodgers versus the Lions, and Mariota versus the Cowboys.
Honestly, I almost think I just ride with Mariota over Rodgers and all those. So I hear you. Rodgers is probably the next best one. He looked really good last week. That was, but it was crazy, man. We were going on like 4 or 5 straight weeks where Rodgers just hadn't completed a pass throw more than 20 yards downfield. So hopefully last week was the start of better things to come. My concern just with the McCarthys and the Tuas of the world too is that offensive line. So I know the secondary matchups are good, but I could just see the Cowboys, Giants, and Lions, sacking McCarthy 5 times.
Yeah, dude, I'm with you. It's just there's no one else available. Like just by our rules. So it's like, would you rather have Shadur Sanders than those guys? And just like say, hey, at least Shadur show me a big game. Like he gets the Bears, the Bills, and the Steelers. So I mean, the Bills have been pretty tough, but neutral matchups versus the Bears and the Steelers. But you also have to worry about what's the weather going to be like in all of those games. But I think it would be fair if you just said you would rather have Shadur than JJ McCarthy. You could be like, well, at least he's shown, because I agree. Like if I was starting an NFL team today and I had to pick between the two guys, I'd take Shadur over McCarthy.
In this ranking, I think I go Mariota, Shuck, Tua, Rodgers, McCarthy, Shador. I'd rank Bryce ahead of McCarthy and Shador, I think. Bryce has at least put together some boom games.
Yep. Okay, so I think that covers it, guys. Like, what's interesting is the best matchups for quarterbacks the rest of the way really belong to crappy quarterbacks. So it just works out that way. It didn't go to the guys that we're all playing every week.
DSTs are kind of the same way too. All the good matchups are like with bad real life defenses. So not the best scheduling gifts this year.
So we'll move on to streaming tight ends. I'll just leave the strength of schedule up here. But I've got Colson Loveland at the top. He's rostered 40% of the time, Ian. Cleveland and Green Bay, not great matchups. Then you get the 49ers. But I'm still just betting on a young player that can still ascend into a larger role who has been performing. So you're betting on the talent, essentially. You're saying talent. Okay, I'm just going to go with it. I think Darren Waller is next. I know that he was in more of a part-time role, not part-time, but a split role last week with Greg Dulcich, but like the matchups are still there. Like, and you've already highlighted those before. Yeah. You get the Steelers, you get the Bengals, the best matchup for tight ends. And you also get, you get the Steelers, Bengals, and the Bucks.
Yeah, and again, if he can get back up to 70% routes, then all of a sudden we'll be excited about it. So if he had the full-time role, dude, we'd be ranking him as like the tight end 6 ahead of that Bengals matchup. So that's the only uncertainty there. Otherwise, I do like the Mike Gesicki guy you got in there at the bottom, only 4%. Because just at that point, man, Mason Taylor, Isaiah Likely, I know Gesicki doesn't have the full-time role, but just give me 5 targets from Joe Burrow versus a couple extra routes, in the New York Jets offense. That's kind of where I'm at that point.
Yeah. I like it. And Gesicki, obviously, like, we just know that he and Burrow do have that chemistry and they can boom on less. Obviously, we hope you guys aren't having to make these sort of decisions, right? I mean, the big 2 takeaways here are, is if you're hurting at tight end, Loveland and Waller are the 2 that are available the most, that I would feel the best about if I had to put them in my lineup. Like, I could swallow that pill and be like, okay, like, fine. I'm probably strong in other areas. And at least I could end up with Waller's role growing. Right, he has the good schedule, and then Loveland's obviously the bet on the younger talent who has had a growing role.
The only other name I put in there, Dwayne, probably behind Loveland and Waller would be Colby Parkinson. Again, saw him start to get that bump up. We'll see when Tyler Higbee comes back. That could mess things up there, but that's just kind of a similar situation where it's like, well, we know Matthew Stafford's going to throw touchdowns. Who's to say Colby can't stay hot?
Yeah, I like that one. Parkinson did have a season high 71% route participation rate last week. We do have the question. We'll get at least one more week of that, guys. And so we haven't heard any news on the soonest Higbee can come back is in week 16, but we don't know for sure that is happening. So I like the call out on that one. And I agree. I think Parkinson above, Parkinson after Loveland and Waller. I like that. Yeah. Now we have come to that portion of the show where Ian is going to shut off his camera and his mic because I'm about to talk about he's literally walking away. I'm going to talk about kickers here. So here we go. We have Ian gone from the screen, and I'm just going to give you guys a couple names. I'm not going to talk about streaming against matchups here, but Eddie Pinheiro is the name, guys. He is only rostered in 9% of leagues, and he is back healthy. He plays for the 49ers. If we look at his games before the injury, 8, 12, 7, 16, 17, 10. He did have a 1 in there, and then 12, 2, and 11. So 9.6 fantasy points per game. That is the sixth best. The 49ers historically have been pretty good for kickers as well. You get to play Tennessee at home. You get Indianapolis in a dome, and then you get to play the Bears at home. So Eddie Pinheiro, I will not be surprised at all if he is the K1 Ian of the fantasy playoffs. One more name for you guys, and it is, I don't even know if I know how to pronounce this. We don't ever talk about kickers, but Andy Borregales of the New England Patriots. And Eddie Pinheiro, guys, only rostered in 9% of leagues. So a lot of you, as much as we hate to talk about kickers, this might be one of the more actionable spots in the show. There's a good chance Pinheiro's better than the kicker you have on your team. Andy Borregales would be the other one. That's for the New England Patriots, 14% rostered. Can't protect you necessarily from weather as much here. You're going to play the Bills at home, then you got to go to Baltimore, and you got to go to the New York Jets. But he's been on a heater over the last 3 games, Ian. 9, 16, and 15 points. He's 10th in fantasy points per game. So Pinheiro, though, is the big takeaway there, guys. And we will move on away from kickers. And we're going to let Mr. Hartitz walk you guys through some of his favorite streamers on defense.
That's right. Some real football players back in action. We got 6 defenses, I think. Rest of the way can help. And man, Buccaneers I thought you guys could maybe stop Kirk Cousins in the year 2025, but they apparently decided not to. So I will say, I have a first round buy in this one league, and I was looking ahead, and I went ahead and just kind of prioritized some of these other groups because as much as Tampa, they've had a nice schedule and they still get Panthers and Dolphins. Like they could turn up well in those games, but just haven't really earned the benefit of the doubt at this point. So the Jaguars are a defense that only rostered, again, 41% of ESPN leagues earlier in this week. They get the Jets, Broncos, and Colts. And just among the groups we're going to talk about, they are like a pretty good real-life defense.
And what is up with you ESPN managers? They are rostered 70% of the time in Yahoo leagues. Dare I say the Yahoo managers are just too sharp for you ESPN.
I guess so, man. Pat Mayo.
Isn't that weird? The spreads we have on some of those, though, because I'll do that. I look sometimes. I was like, oh my god, like how's there a 30% difference between 2 sites on a defense?
These numbers I think were from Tuesday when I looked, but that's still a huge change. I wouldn't have expected.
Yeah, that's a big one.
So
but I like the call on the Jaguars if they are available.
Moral of the story. I need to be in a Yahoo league with DSTs next year so I can keep better track of this, Dwain. Right now, I only got ESPN. So, okay, but the more reasonable ones that are probably out there for you guys. The Chiefs this week, they get the Chargers and Arrowhead. And again, that LA offensive line is just so banged up, so I could see Herbert taking more sacks. More importantly, though, if you guys do have that ever-important bye, Tennessee Titans here in Week 16. Cam Ward, again, I think he's taken at least 3 sacks in all but 2 or 3 games this season, turnovers and all that. And then even the Broncos in Week 17, not thrilled about that, but it's a must-win game. Bo Nix, not exactly someone who's immune to having some turnovers. He does do a good job of avoiding sacks, but I like the Chiefs at least for this week and next week. The 49ers are a group that, again, so banged up, but that said, before their bye, man, they did only allow, I think, 17 points over the course of their last 2 games.
Matchups
and then again, just the schedule, Titans and Colts, and even the Bears in Week 17 if you need to. So I like them. The Bears, just for this week against the Browns, the Saints have an amazing schedule. It's just the Saints, but Panthers, Jets, and Titans there. Then the Cowboys would be the other one, Dwain. Vikings, Chargers, and the Commanders, a mix of, again, just banged up offensive lines.
I think I would go Cowboys over Saints just because I think Dallas has a better chance to build a lead and make the other teams predictable. Now, again, like, guys, look, these are we're getting into some sick territory here. Like, Cowboys defense has not been good this year, but I actually want a team that can force other teams to pass, even though it could be bad because they could give up a lot of yards and touchdowns. But the other thing that can happen is strip sack fumbles, picking those up for touchdowns, pick sixes. Those are the kind of big swings. Like, if you don't have one of the good defenses and you're trying to offset one of the good defenses, like, you may have to take a gamble. And I think the Cowboys also Trayvon Diggs has been terrible this year, but they are going to get him back. And he is one of these guys, Ian, that likes to gamble. He could get burned for an 80-yard touchdown, but he might give you a pick six. Like, I can't tell you for sure which one it's going to be.
And he's come back from a concussion, so I wouldn't expect him to be at less than 100% physically, at least when he's out there. So, no, I hear you. And again, that kind of went back to why we like the Buccaneers, at least for the stretch, theoretically, because them and the Cowboys are two of these teams, particularly in the last 6 weeks or so, where they are so stout, the line of scrimmage, that they kind of compel teams to pass. And that's where we can get fantasy points, sacks, pick sixes, strip sacks, and all that. Like when teams are running the ball against you, it's just really tough to make it happen. So, again, out of these, I think if you just wanted one the whole way, Dwayne, I'm with you on the Cowboys, because the other box they check is like they're actively trying to compete and still make the playoffs. That's more so their concern with the Saints. So I like the Chiefs over these next 2 weeks just to get the Chargers and Titans. Similar sentiment with the 49ers. So I would say if you're just worried about these next 2 weeks, Chiefs and 49ers, and they also check that like we're still trying to win football games box, Cowboys and Saints. Those would be the big four.
Yep. I like the still trying to win football games. And sometimes it doesn't matter, guys. Like you saw the Falcons last night, like it's not their defense necessarily, but like the team showed up, right? And they still played an NFL game against a team competing for a playoff spot and won. So love it. Love it. Really appreciate you hopping on today, Ian. It's been too long. Like I think we did one of these in the preseason with you on Talk Data to Me. And so we'll be doing more of them though, guys, through the off season. We'll cover a lot of fun topics on here. Obviously I'll be back with someone next week and we'll talk some more probably about some playoffs and I don't know, some other fun stuff. So we will see you next week. And, again, thank you, Ian. We appreciate you. Great day to be great. That's the way we'll end this one. Later, guys.
Amen.